In this video, we're going to go through another Bain case interview from Bain's website. I've included a link to the case in the video description below in case you want to give the case a try on your own. Before we get started, please help support the channel by giving this video a like. Let's begin. So our client is Fashion Co., a player in the women's fashion market. It's been in the industry for a long time, but has experienced declining revenues each year for the past 5 years. Fashion Co. wants to understand what is causing this decline. What can the organization do to drive revenue? Fashion Co. will have a management meeting at the end of the week, and the CEO wants a recommendation from Bain on how to proceed. What can they do to drive revenue? From this information, we know that there are 2 steps in this case. First, we want to identify what is causing the decline in revenue. Then, we want to determine the best way to increase revenue. When thinking about the framework, we can think about it from both a quantitative and qualitative perspective. On the quantitative side, we want to look at the key drivers of revenue. We want to understand what is causing the decline in revenue. Is it from a decrease in quantity of units sold? If so, is the decrease concentrated in a particular product line, geography, or customer segment? Or is the decline due to a decrease in price? Are we selling products at a lower price? Is there a sales mix change? Or in other words, are we selling more of low-priced products and fewer high-priced products? On the qualitative side, we want to understand what factors might be causing the decline in revenue. We can look into 3 areas here: the customers, competitors, and the overall market. Looking at customers, have customer needs or preferences changed? Have their purchasing habits or behaviors changed? Or have their perceptions of our company changed? Looking at competitors, have new players entered the market? Have existing competitors made any recent strategic moves? Or are competitors also experiencing a decline in revenue? Looking at the market, are there any market trends that we should be aware of? For example, are there new technology or regulatory changes? And how do these trends impact Fashion Co.'s revenue? Let's look at the sample framework that Bain provides. Their framework is broken down into 2 categories: understanding the market and understanding key revenue drivers. I would prefer that the first category be further broken down. This category covers competitors, customers, and the overall market, which are all very broad categories. I think further breaking down this category into these 3 components could help make the framework appear more structured and more exhaustive. However, I do like how this framework breaks down revenue into raising price and increasing volume. It is very mutually exclusive and completely exhaustive. However, this framework doesn't seem to address what is causing the decline in revenue. In my opinion, it would have been better to first identify the major revenue driver behind the decline in revenue before moving on to suggesting ways to increase revenues. Regardless of which framework you think is best, both frameworks share a lot of similarities, which is a good sign that both frameworks are covering the most important aspects of the case. Let's move on to the next section. After formulating your framework, it's time to walk your interviewer through your structure and analysis step by step. Once you've walked through your thinking, propose where you would like to start. In this case, start by deep diving into developing a better understanding of current marketing and consumer trends. So at this point, we're asked to deep dive into developing a better understanding of current market and consumer trends. So on the market side, I'm most interested in understanding 1. Are revenues declining in the industry overall? This will help determine whether this is an industry-wide problem or a company-specific problem. 2. Have new players entered the market or have existing players made any recent strategic moves? And 3. What are the major market trends that could be impacting sales of women's fashion? On the consumer side, I'm most interested in understanding 1. What are the different customer segments in women's fashion? 2. What are the products that Fashion Co. sells to each of these segments? And 3. For each customer segment that Fashion Co. sells to, are their needs and preferences being met by Fashion Co.'s products? This will help us determine which products are causing the decline in revenue and why customers are no longer purchasing Fashion Co.'s products, if that's the case. Comparing this to the suggestions that Bain provides, it seems like they also include a lot of these points. I think our approach here is a bit better because we structured our ideas a bit more under both the market trends and consumer trends categories. So moving on, the next part of the case asks us to provide additional suggestions to continue the conversation. Without actually getting any of the answers to our previous questions, it's very difficult for us to suggest where we should focus our efforts on. For example, if we find out that competitors' revenues are increasing, we would need to understand how they are growing their revenues. Are they increasing their marketing spend? Are they better integrating technology into their stores? Or have they launched a new loyalty program? If customer needs and preferences are shifting, we need to focus on what customers now want. Then, we can determine what kinds of products Fashion Co. should focus on developing to meet this new customer demand. Looking at Bain's suggestions, it looks like they have a long list of ideas. Some of the ideas that we didn't cover include online versus brick-and-mortar store sales and offering an easier way to return clothing to make the shopping experience better. Let's move on. After understanding the different market and consumer trends, brainstorm ways the company can drive revenue. We can think about increasing revenue either organically or inorganically. Organically, we can either increase revenues through existing revenue streams or new revenue streams. Through existing revenue streams, we can increase the price of our products. This is the easiest thing to do, but a consequence is that quantity of units sold would go down. We would need to do a price sensitivity analysis to determine if overall revenues would increase. On the quantity side, we can increase quantity of units sold by increasing marketing and advertising spend. This would be costly, so we should consider the return on investment. We could also offer more discounts and promotions. This would also be costly, so we'd need to see if the increase in quantity justifies the cost of the promotions. We could also look to target new customer segments or new geographies that we do not currently target. Looking at new revenue streams, we can look to offer new products. What customer needs and preferences are not being met? Fashion Co. can create and sell new products to meet these unmet needs. Fashion Co. could also look to offer services such as warranties or insurance on expensive clothing. They could also offer clothing repair services. Finally, looking at inorganic revenue growth, Fashion Co. could consider acquiring another player to leverage their products, distribution channels, and brand name. They could also look at forming partnerships to reach new customer segments, geographies, or distribution channels. Let's look at the answer that Bain provides. Looking at the good answer first, I don't really like this answer too much because it just randomly lists ideas. It does not structure the ideas in a clear, logical way. Similarly, looking at the better answer, there is also very little structure. However, I do like how this answer clearly lists the pros and cons of each idea. So let's move on. The CEO will most likely need to approve a new sales and advertising strategy, so the CFO and CMO will narrow it down to two possible options. Option A, a rewards program. Estimated number of customers participating in year 1 is 25%. Number of customers is 10 million, assumed to be flat. Average pre-sale spend per customer per year is $100. One-time customer activation fee is $50. And with the rewards program, customers always receive 20% off. Option B, intermittent sales. Customers is also 10 million. Average pre-sale spend per person per year is $100, and this is assumed to be evenly distributed across years. The model would be that customers receive a 20% discount 3 months per year, and the assumption is that the discount would increase pre-sale purchase sales by 100% over these 3 months. Which one would result in more revenue this year? So, let's calculate the incremental revenues that each of these options would provide. We can then recommend the option that leads to the highest increase in revenues, taking into account ease of implementation and potential risks. Looking at option A, we would generate revenue from the $50 customer activation fee, but we would also lose revenue from customers receiving a 20% discount, which would be the cost of this option. Looking at option B, sales would increase by 100% over 3 months, thus increasing revenues. However, Fashion Co. would lose revenue from customers receiving a 20% discount. Let's calculate the incremental revenue from option A first. If 25% of customers participate, and there are 10 million customers, 2.5 million customers will participate. Each of these customers generates $50 in incremental revenue from the customer activation fee, so this is an increase in revenues of $125 million. However, each customer would receive 20% off their average annual purchase of $100, so the cost of this program is 2.5 million customers times $100 customer average spend times 20% discount, which is $50 million. Net overall, option A provides an increase in revenue of $125 million minus $50 million, or $75 million. Let's calculate the incremental revenue from option B next. If customers spend $100 per year, then they spend $25 every 3 months, assuming that spending is distributed evenly across the year. Assuming all customers experience a 100% increase in sales, each customer would spend an additional $25. However, these customers would also get a 20% discount on their purchases over this 3-month period. So since customers spend $50 each over this period, or their original $25 plus the increase in sales of $25, a 20% discount is $10. This is an incremental $15 in revenue per customer. Multiplying this by 10 million customers, we get an incremental increase in revenues of $150 million. This is higher than option A's increase in revenues of $75 million. Therefore, option B would result in more revenue. However, it is worth noting that option A could be better than option B if Fashion Co is able to increase the number of customers that participate in the rewards program. If 50% of customers participate instead of 25%, then both of these options would yield the same increase in revenue. Let's look at Bain's sample solution. So the sample answer led to the same conclusion. However, the sample approach calculated total revenue instead of incremental revenue. I think either approach works, but calculating incremental revenue may save a few extra steps. We'll move on to the recommendation now. After understanding and researching the facts, what are your recommended next steps for Fashion Co? A potential recommendation for this case might look like the following. I recommend that Fashion Co launch an intermittent sales strategy in the short term and consider launching a rewards program in the long term. There are 2 reasons to support this. 1. An intermittent sales strategy would increase revenues by $150 million per year, which is a 15% increase in annual revenues. A rewards program would only increase revenues by $75 million. 2. If the number of customers that sign up for the reward program were to increase to over 50%, then this strategy would increase revenues by more than $150 million per year. Therefore, if Fashion Co could increase signups among customers, this could be a better option. For next steps, there are 2 areas to look into. 1. Forecast rewards program signups in year 2 and beyond. This will help inform us when we might consider switching from an intermittent sales strategy to a rewards program strategy. 2. Understand if Fashion Co's products are actually satisfying customer needs and preferences. While sales strategies can be effective in increasing revenues, if these are changing, then our current recommendations will not solve our revenue problem in the long term. Let's look at the sample recommendations that Bain provides. Looking at the good answer, I don't like it because it is deceptively too simple. It doesn't consider any risks of the recommendation or suggest additional next steps to look into. Looking at the better answer, it talks about risks, additional considerations, and next steps. However, it does not provide a firm recommendation. It simply states that option A might be a better long-term strategy, instead of recommending that Fashion Co should consider switching to option A if signups increase to over 50% of customers. Additionally, I think it could do a better job at enumerating the explicit reasons that support the recommendation. So that brings us to the end of the case. I think the key takeaways from this case is being able to structure an approach to identify the reasons for a decline in revenue. Ideally, you would first look at it from a quantitative perspective to identify what revenue driver is responsible for the decline. Then, you can look at qualitative aspects such as customer, competition, and market to understand why revenue is decreasing. If you understand this, you can brainstorm ideas for increasing revenues and prioritize the idea that makes the most sense. If you found this case walkthrough helpful, please make sure to give this video a like and check out the other case interview videos on the channel.